the stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite and greatest son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we started this show during COVID because we just wanted to connect with buddies and make people smile. And this is exactly why we connected. Rod Price has been a great friend to me. He's been a mentor to me. He's helped me so much. He's also an incredible legend, especially in the WCCW, where he was champion for many years. We were in Europe together for an entire season, working for Otto Vance and Peter William in Austria and Germany. We also have gone to Japan together a bunch. We've had a lot of fun together. He is Mr. Rod Price. Rod, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Again, man, it's such a pleasure being in front of these two Hall of Famers, man. You made my day, my year. So thank you for having me.
All right, I want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on. We've never had the opportunity to meet each other in person. So when John told me he was going to have you on, I've read all about you. And, I love old Texas wrestling and all that stuff, man. And it's a pleasure to have you on. We've had guys on that know you and told stories about you. So finally, we're getting to hear the stories man to man and from the guy who started the story. So welcome aboard, man. We're going to have a great time here today.
Thank you, Mr. Brisco. It's my pleasure, sir.
Hey, and most of the stories were from James Beard, so you can just throw them out the window. The credibility is.
You're not friends with that guy too, are you?
Oh, the two Texas guys, man. I'm stuck.
Do you find the same? You're a California lad. I'm an Oklahoman. Yes, I'm there in God's country, just north of that cesspool of the state of Texas there. But so a lot of times I'm outnumbered on this show, so it's good to kind of have a neutral guy on there from California.
Yes, sir.
That can look at the world and appreciate Oklahoma for what it's worth, for all the great splendor that Oklahoma has. And look at Texas for what it really is. And I won't get into that. I'll let you.
Hey, he's the California stud. He had nothing to do with Oklahoma, all right? And he got indoctrinated by Jim Weba, Mr. Skandor Akbar.
Mr. Jim Weba, man. And what a football encyclopedia that guy was. Man, I love going. He would say, in 1932, Tex Ram ran 99 yards for the winning touchdown against Beaumont. Who in the hell is Tex Ram? And they didn't even have 99 yards back in those days.
That's exactly right. He could tell you their stats, their height, what size jock they wore. He knew it all, man.
You know what was amazing, Rod, was that was before the internet, and he worked on Friday nights.
Right.
So I don't know how he knew so much about high school football.
Newspaper. They used
his
brother newspaper and read it up and down, man.
His brother also was a top DJ. I don't know if you knew that in Oklahoma City. He was one of the morning drive time stars, one of the first morning drive time stars I ever. Dale Weba was his name.
Really?
Dale Weba.
I'd never heard that.
Did what, John?
I'd never heard that.
Yeah, he was a big radio personality there for years and years. And while I was in high school, just about the whole time there, his brother was.
Yeah, Rod, you must have so much, like I do, so much admiration for Ack. He was just, anybody who dealt with Ack just smiles when they hear his name.
Yeah, always. I always love these stories, man. Whenever we were going through, I would say Mississippi, around Pittsburgh, he's telling me about Civil War, just history, and his stories, man, were just crazy.
Well, hell, he fought the Civil War, though, guys. So first-hand experience. There's a picture out on the internet of him and my brother Jack. They're bent over like this, and both of them are basically rookies at the time. Jim Ack had a couple more years on Jack, and that's where Jack had kind of filtered toward him so he could get the knowledge. Plus all of Ack's football knowledge. Jack and loved hearing those stories there. But there's a great picture of him and Jack talking to each other back when they were both real young. If you ever get a chance, take a look at it. But let's talk about you, Rod. I mean, you were a California guy. You're a football star out there. I guess San Diego State or some of those San Diego area.
Long Beach,
was you interested in wrestling at the time? And tell us a little bit about your background before we get started on your wrestling career.
I grew up out there. I went to San Bernardino Valley College, little JT College. Played there 2 years. We won the national championship or the state championship my sophomore year. I got picked up by Long Beach State. I got full scholarship. I went there for a semester, and the coaches changed. They recruited me that we were going to be playing in Anaheim Stadium with TV and all that jazz. And it turned out we were at this little veteran stadium that a high school team or a middle school team plays at. And I was like, this isn't what I got recruited for. This isn't what I signed up for. So when the coaches left, I left too. And I went and played semi-pro football because I needed the money. And, when it was $350, $400 a week to play. So I figured, why not?
Who'd you play for?
It was LA. It wasn't the LA Stallions. It was the LA Ponies.
Yeah, they get to the ponies to get to the Stallions.
But
so did you have any wrestling background when you were growing up, or just?
I wrestled a little bit in junior high school. Just I think maybe 1 year, and my dad was a basketball coach, so he always pushed me towards that. Mm-hmm. Basketball, football,
yeah,
a little bit of baseball.
But, were you growing up a pro wrestling fan also, or was that kind of the background?
Since I could turn on the TV, I loved pro wrestling.
Who were some of the guys that you grew up watching?
I remember Crusher, Bruiser. The Kangaroos stick out in my mind. It seemed like every time
that's the original Kangaroos too, right? Roy Costello and Roy Hefferman and Al Costello.
Yes, sir. And fascination. I can remember. I was such a mark and still am, but such a mark. I can remember, watching that studio TV and doing the job matches. But when the good matches came on, they always said, well, if you want to see this match, you got to come down to the Civic Center front. I was like, oh, man, because I knew my parents were never going to take me.
And the thing about it, the frustrating thing as a fan back in those days, they would cut off at the finish and build up this great match.
So frustrating.
So long. Come down to the Olympic Auditorium Friday night.
Hey, and every week you're sitting there watching the main event going, and you're looking at the clock going, it's almost 11:30. They got to have a finish. Got to have a finish.
Come on.
No, not again. They got you every single week with it.
Oh, I was crushed, man. But I grew up.
Where was that wrestling out of?
It was AWA.
So you got it out of the TV
when I go back to my grandparents, which lived in Indiana, it was always AWA, right around Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So California, we caught NWA or AWA, NWA.
Now, this is after or before Piper or after Piper had his LA run or what?
Before. This is before. Mm-hmm. And when Blassie and Piper, when that was getting hot, of course I was in school and I was doing commercials I did a commercial as a professional wrestler. Red Bastien, Billy Anderson were the consultants for the commercial. And we got to talk. They dressed me up like a Mad Max guy for the commercial. And I got to talking with Billy. I got to talking with Red. Red and I hit it off really early. And he's like, yeah, man, if you need something, if you really want to get into it, he gave me his card. And about a year later, I called him and he sent me to Mondo Guerrero to start training it was a muffler shop in East LA.
Muffler shop. Let's back up just a little bit, if you don't mind. How did you get hooked up with Red Bastien? I mean, Red's an all-time legend hero all across the world.
Absolutely. I hooked up with Red again when we were doing the commercial.
Okay.
That's when I first met Red. And then I followed, he gave me his card and I followed him up and followed him. I hounded him because I was like, I really wanted to do wrestling. And he finally said, man, he passed me off to Armando Guerrero.
Were you still playing football at the time?
I was still playing football. I was trying to go to college still, doing a couple of, off-season night classes. And I was wanting to wrestle. So I started training and was going to camps. They would, with the Rams, they'd keep me up to 6-8 weeks, cut me. And sometimes they'd bring me back. Other times, it'd be later in the season. I'd be playing semi-pro again because I was making that $350 a week. And I fell more in love with wrestling than football. And it was strange for me because football was always my first love since I was a kid. But that draw of pro wrestling, man, just sucked me in and still got me sucked.
And plus, you met a character like Red Bastien right off the bat. I mean, when the folks that don't know, look Red Bastien up. He was a character of all characters in professional wrestling. A guy that everybody looks up to in this business. Everybody.
Red was so good to me throughout my career. Even when I didn't know who he was in the business, being green and 21 or 20. And as green and as ignorant as I was, but but I started learning about him and about the respect that that you have, because I had that with football and carries over into wrestling, about the guys that paved the way, and I learned that. And Red he took me under his wing when I was doing some matches in California. It wasn't really, the territories were starting to dry up a little bit. And Red said, you might want to go to Texas. World class is going strong. Might want to get out to Texas. I moved to Texas. James Beard and Larry Dwyer were the first two people that took me in. I found out later that Red had called James and said, hey, man, I got this kid coming out. I want you to, see if you can help him out a bit. And they did. James took care of me. Larry Dwyer helped me get my first match with Killer Tim Brooks. He was running a promotion at the Longhorn Ballroom right down the road.
Yeah. Absolutely, right down the road from the Sportatorium.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything suspicious as far as like stolen anything at that East LA muffler shop, was there?
No.
Sounds like it's a front for a fencing operation.
I was sucking air, man, because of course they're working on mufflers, and the shop is just sucking in all that carbon, all that.
How did Mondo get that as his training ground?
I don't know. Him and Billy Anderson were there too. And all those fumes, man, for 2 hours we'd work out. And they're sucking that out. And they go, well, I'll go outside and breathe that good LA smog air. Oh, yeah, I feel so much better now.
You mentioned Bill Anderson. Hey, that's another name that, that's so respected in our business that really don't get a lot of airplay. But Bill, what an outstanding worker. What an outstanding man that Bill was.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Billy, how did you like Mondo? I met Mondo, much later. But the Guerreros were so big out there, especially in Hollywood with his brother Chavo, and they knew everybody out there. I mean, was Mondo enjoyable to train with?
Mondo was fun. You never had a dull moment with him.
I've never met a Guerrero that's not fun. They're just good people.
I always thought of him as Cheech. He was from Cheech. I can't get that out of my head, man. But he brought it every day. He would bring something in, said, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. Try this, try that. And, after 2 or 3 weeks, John, I learned it was a rib. He just goes, I just want to see if you could do it.
Hey, you
Was
know
the
what's
LaBelles around at that time too?
No, sir, I didn't. I didn't see the LaBelles. I wish I would have, but I never had the opportunity.
there's such a great connection there with the Guerreros and Gene LaBelle and Freddie
Man.
Prinze Sr. And I mean, they were connected such in Hollywood, you know, and Chavo Jr. now is such a connected guy in Hollywood as well, you know, for the same reason, because he's very talented.
Yes, absolutely. And I when I was training too, that's when Mondo was doing the book and the video for Gene LaBelle doing his shoot hold.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great history. Hey, and then you come to Texas and you run into the guy that has helped basically everybody who's been in Texas, and that's James Beard. I mean, James is just one of the best guys on the planet, you know, and he's helped
Absolutely.
so many people.
Were you there when Penny was around?
No. No, I don't think so. Who was Penny? Tell me and I might remember.
Okay.
Or I'll lie about it.
It might have been before you, John. We used to live in a house with probably 4 people. It's James, a friend that was from James's band, Tommy, Penny, and myself. We rented a house in Dallas. Penny and James were, you know, they were girlfriend, boyfriend. But Penny was a little loopy. She was like the mothership, man. I'm telling you, she was out there. And if you ever get the chance, ask James about the time I had to call the cops to get him out of the house from Penny.
Well, hell, let's don't ask James. Let's ask you. You're the source of the story.
He didn't bring it up much, but it was some interesting nights because she really went off, man. They had those great big mastiff dogs. The cops came. She sicked those mastiffs on the cops. Cops had to shoot them.
Shoot the dogs?
Yeah.
No.
It was crazy. It was crazy. James, we went to the sportatorium that night. That night he was refereeing my match, and I'd walk up to him and I'd brush his arm. It was just a house show. I'd brush his arm. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "You got that red light on you, buddy."
Holy cow.
She was psycho, man. She was psycho.
I'd never heard that. I'd never heard
that. I'm sure James can clarify. He's a way better storyteller than I am. But James can absolutely verify.
And Killer Brooks too. They're all part of that, right? Was Killer the booker at that time?
Yes, sir.
Was Red the one that sent you out there?
Yes, sir. Red Bastine's the one that sent me out there. Killer took me in. You know what? And Killer actually took me to his school. You know, he was running, at that time, he was running the Sportatorium, Longhorn Ballroom, and Stagecoach in Fort Worth. And I still needed polishing, and Tim Brooks took me under his wing then and polished me up. And Tim and I had such a good relationship. I'm so forever grateful for Tim. I just had so many people in my life, man, that are legends in this business that took care of me. You know, it's awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned that Longhorn Ballroom. When I was in I think I just got out of high school. I was a freshman at Oklahoma State University. Jerry Lee Lewis was playing down there in the Longhorn. And I was such a Jerry Lee Lewis fan. I wanted to see him so bad. So we went down there. Of course, the place is sold out. So I go up to the window. There's 5 of us. And I went up to the window. I said, Jerry Lee Lewis left me tickets at the will call office. Oh, yeah, okay, sir. Well, what's your name? I said, Gerald Brisco. They're back there looking. They're taking tickets out. And as they take the tickets out, I see this name. I don't know what the name is. It said 5 tickets. They said, sorry, sir. Your name don't. Well, maybe they left it for my friend, James Beard. I'm just using that name. And she goes back about, oh, here it is right now. Enjoy the show. So I got so we got inside. So now we're thinking, man, when this guy shows up, he's got no tickets. We're gonna be in trouble, you know. So sure enough, about halfway through the concert, you know, the place is jam packed. This guy comes in. Excuse me, sir. We think you have our seats. We're supposed to be sitting here. Well, that's okay. You know, everybody's out on the dance floor anyways. We just got up, grabbed our liquor, and went someplace else, and avoided a confrontation with those Texans. Man, but what a night that was at the
A lot of memories there, man.
yeah.
That's typical of Okie people sneaking in.
Well, getting those Texas tickets, man, they were free, man. We didn't have no money on us either, man. But we were just took a chance, went there, and it took some fast thinking to get in there. But that Longhorn ball, they had wrestling in there too, but not at that time, right? That later on.
Later on, they had the wrestling. It was like, as I remember, every night was something. They had Aerosmith was doing. They were shooting a video there. Then the next night would be all country music. The next night would be wrestling.
And you know what was amazing?
Every night you had something happen.
And that was not a good part of town.
No.
And they drew good crowds there. I mean, it was pretty impressive that they drew big crowds there because they were not in a favorable location. Neither was
Industrial Canadians.
You know, back in those days, though, wrestling wasn't always in the best part of town either. That's where you had to know how to fight a lot back in those days. You know?
Well, you know, the Sportatorium was kind of like we were riding in downtown New York one time, me and Godfather and Ron and I think Teddy Long or Scorpio or somebody. And Godfather goes, can you imagine how many illegal things there are in this one city block? I said, can you imagine how many illegal things there are in this car? So the Sportatorium, I don't know if there's more illegal things in the Sportatorium dressing room or outside in the block that surrounded it. They kind of fit.
We all have our favorite places to work. Is Sportatorium one of your favorite places to work too?
Oh, absolutely.
What was the mistake about that building? I mean, it was even back then it was a rundown old shack of a building. You know?
Absolutely, and it was 120, you know, during the summer, and plus with the lights, that made it about 150. I can remember selling, and during July or August, it was so hot.
And people were smoking back in those days. It was 120 degrees. That cigarette smoke was right on top of you, man. It
was like a cloud. You know, you had that little tub light with the cloud and the heat. You're just laying there sweating, man.
Rod, it was literally
it was the best times of my life, man. I love
literally like the old boxing. Literally like the old boxing shows. You remember, you know, you'd film it up top, you see all the smoke, you know, around the ring. When you walk down that aisle, you'd see all that smoke from everybody smoking. It had nowhere to go because there was no ventilation.
The only thing they didn't have coming down, John, was a microphone from the ceiling. You remember that?
Right. Killer was such a good dude. I loved Killer, but he was, in my mind, you know, I say one of the greatest heels of all time. As far as where he was and what he did, he was one of the greatest heels of all time. He was such a good heel.
And Tim was so, to me, he was so honest. You know, he never tried to BS you. He'd come up straight. You know, if you screwed up in a match, he'd say, "That was horrible. That just stunk." But if you were good, of course he would. You know, he'd give you the praise. But I loved Tim. You know, we traveled up and down with Ack and Tim and James and Sam Houston and just hitting the towns that we hit, and we had a ball, man. I enjoyed with Tim. I remember Tim driving one night. I was sitting in the back and I was drinking beer. It started with James. He started driving. He's swerving. We're coming back from New Orleans, going to Dallas. Tim gets in. He's smoking cigarettes after cigarettes, trying to stay awake, and he's throwing them out the window, and they're coming back in the back window on me. I said, all right, one more person. Sam Houston got in there. Of course, Sam was already lit. I was like, pull the car over. I go, I can drink beer and drive. I know that. So I got in front and I drove us home. Everybody else, we pulled up back to the sportatorium to get our cars. It was like nighttime for Bonzo. Everybody was out snoring, and here I am. I'm going, man. I slammed the door to wake everybody up.
Those old trips, man. I remember those well.
That Amarillo to Dallas, too, boy. That was tough.
Down 287.
Yeah, that was tough. I made it with Dick, though.
Was that before I-20 opened up?
No, it was a different route. I-20 went straight out. 287 went up north to Amarillo. So I-20 went down, kind of down south, and went further south down to Interstate 10 down in El Paso. 287 ran from Fort Worth straight up through Vernon and Wichita Falls, and then all the way up to Amarillo.
Yes, sir.
What's Tim Brooks really Murdoch's cousin or nephew or something like that?
He claimed to it.
He claimed.
So
John, you're laughing.
I never saw a birth certificate, Mr. Brisco.
No, I've told this joke a million times. I've told Mr. Brisco this a million times, but I know you've heard it, Rod, where Killer would be in the dress room and Dick Murdoch would come in and go, Killer and I are cousins. And he go, Killer had sex with our neighbor's handicapped chickens. And Killer would look up and go, those chickens weren't handicapped. that was their Ricky and Robert impression. They told that after a while, you've heard the same joke 100 times, but it starts becoming funny because it's so repetitive.
Yes.
And they sell it every time, like it's the first time they've ever told it. And then those guys tortured Black Bart.
Oh man, Dick was the worst with it. When Bart heard you come in with your cowbell at the sportatorium, he just throw his hat up and here we go, that big long tall glass of water there.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times he'd call me that tall drink of shit, and he would just snarl like he hated me when he'd say it.
Every time.
And I'd sit right beside him just because I know he's saying it. He spit in that trash. I spend half my life spitting in a trash can. Yes, you do. Bart's
do you remember, John, when you put his gear on?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He couldn't find his gear.
Yeah. And I'm wearing it.
How did you get it?
I stole it from him. I mean, he was there in his locker. I was right beside him. I put all his gear. I put his hat on, everything, and he's looking for it. And I'm sitting there wearing it. Yeah.
All you damn Texans look the same anyway.
He told me, he goes, Johnny, I love you, but I'm gonna find a patch of green grass. I'm about to teach you a lesson.
That's him doing tea, man.
I go, Bart, how many times you gonna teach me a lesson? It doesn't do any good. Just I loved Bart. Bart, every territory needs a Black Bart.
Yeah.
Because
he's fun and everybody loves him.
That was a great thing about the territory back then. Black Bart visited all of them, man.
That's right, Black Bart.
So tell me this story. This is a story I've been dying to hear. So you're sitting in a sportatorium, somebody don't show up, and then it walks this rookie that you got to carry for his very first match ever. Who was that guy, and how did that happen in your words, not in Layfield's words?
That was that famous Texan that's your buddy, that big tall glass of drink of water right next to you, man. John came in, and however it worked out, James said,
well,
you're in the main event.
Right, I mean, I'm sorry, but what happened was Lou Perez couldn't make the show. You were supposed to work with Lou, who was Al's working cousin or something. And Lou couldn't make it because of travel or something. So that's how they put me in as the surprise replacement.
And John, that wasn't the one that you broke your knee brace on, was it?
I don't think so. That was my first. That was
broke the knee brace on you.
Yeah, that was. Oh my God! It had that old clunky knee brace that from 30 years ago that he couldn't move in. I hated that thing. Yeah, that was my first.
You remember when that one went out?
Oh yeah.
I shot you in the corner. You said, "My knee brace is gone. My knee's out." I dropped every leg hold.
Yeah, because I
So
couldn't get up.
how stiff was that clumsy old Texan?
Oh my goodness! You know, Mr. Brisco, you never had the pleasure of working him and Bobby Duncombe Jr. in a tag match.
Man.
I'd slam Bobby outside the ring on the concrete just to see if I could cool him down for a minute.
Didn't work, did it?
I jumped on the ropes and I feel Bobby's big hand on my shoulder.
Oh God.
You know, so much for that.
So
I feel for you, my friend.
it was I got so lucky because I come down there looking for a job and Lou Perez doesn't show and I get stuck in there with you. I met the two right people. I met James Beard, who's been such a wonderful friend to me and everything to me for so many years. And then I got stuck in the ring with you who could work. So it was, I had no idea
we had a good night.
What I was doing. I thank God I was out there with you.
Well, I was thank God at least you had some background. Some of these guys coming in, they're
he had no background, man. He comes right straight from Brad Reagan.
I've been trained at least,
and he thought that's the way you're supposed to work. So, man, was he? How stiff was he in there?
Oh, you know,
that expression said it all right.
I'm still recovering, Mr. Brisco.
And he's still stiff like that too, from what I heard.
I just, you know what? Good thing that was before you had that clothesline from hell.
Yeah,
that's right.
Wasn't going to take that.
Well, when I started, Gary Hart said, "Oh, you know this because I was from Sweetwater, Texas. I really am from there." Now Barry Windham and I think Blackjack claimed they were from there. I don't think Barry ever lived there. So he goes, "You know, this is the cousin to Barry Windham." And so for years, I didn't know if I had heat with Barry or not because everybody's telling me I'm the cousin of. I never said it, but Gary Hart did. So everybody, I got people are like, "Oh, this is Barry Windham's cousin." Now I didn't deny it a bunch because that was a pretty good thing. But I did the flying lariat like Barry did at first. That's before I developed the other one.
The softer version is
the softer version.
I don't know though between Barry Windham's lariat and John's lariat, only Stan Hansen can probably top those two.
I think I totally agree. I mean, never had Barry, but I've had John's.
Hey,
young John's too, right?
We were in Budokan and we're wrestling Stan and Bobby Duncombe Jr. Me and Barry are, and I think it's Budokan. And so anyway, they want to, they want to hit Barry with the clothesline at the end, hit me with it first, and hit Barry with it. And Barry comes in the dressing room, and his eyes busted open, his cheeks all swollen, and Stan goes, "Thank you, Barry." And Barry, calm as he could be, he goes, "Stan, put on your glasses." Stan put on his glasses. He looked up and he goes, "What happened to you?"
you son of a gun.
Yeah, like he had no idea that he just almost decapitated Barry Windham. So who was you said Killer was booking when you were there? Who was Al Perez the top guy when you were there?
Yeah, Al Perez was still on top.
When you first got there, I mean.
When I first got there, of course, Kerry and Kevin, they were still the show.
Yeah.
But you had, oh man, you're really making me think about almost 37 years ago, John. It's a lot of beers.
A lot of miles of beers, yeah.
It's amazing. People tell me, say, "Hey, remember that match you had?" I never had that match. Then they show me a video and I'm in the match. Yeah, I do.
That's the only way I can remember too, man.
Yeah. Well, you got your break. I didn't realize that this happened until I started watching some of the stuff on you getting ready for the show, which is the cool part of this show because I got to watch a bunch of your matches and tapes and stuff. Was you not broke in? You started in Texas by jumping Kerry. Yes. That's a pretty big role to get in right away to jump the big Von Erich boy.
I'm telling you, I got to thank Jerry Lawler. That was him and Jerry Jarrett's idea. Said I hadn't had a lot of TV exposure when I got there, so they said, "Hey, let's do this guy man out of the audience thing," and I was like, show me what, tell me what you want to do. And so I would go there and have that front row ticket, just bad mouthing him, keep bad mouthing him, and of course, Steve Austin told me.
How long did they work that where you're the man in the crowd?
They worked that angle for about 4 or 5 weeks, to where every week it got a little more heat, our exchange. There was no contact, just a little more verbal heat, verbal gestures. In the beginning, it was just me, one-sided, and then it got to the point where I was getting that carry to where we were exchanging, and the next week, I may throw something at him, make him confront me again, until they had the thing where I was they said, second time you see Kerry come down the aisle, I want you to jump him. So second time I see him, I'm going to jump him. That's in my head. He comes down for a little pre-min match. They go to intermission. He comes down the same aisle to take pictures at the ringside with no cameras running, nothing. And in my mind, this is the second time I'm going to see him. So I jumped him. I started wailing. You talk about a look of cluelessness in his eyes. It was a shoot for him, but unfortunately, they didn't have the cameras weren't rolling. They never got taped of it.
Wow.
So what did you do?
We couldn't. We just went on to the match. They hyped it up that at intermission, this and that. I think they had a little video of me getting dragged out by security. Curly and Bill Caldwell were all dragging me out of the sportatorium, and we built up to the match the week after that.
Wow. Now this is just right after the Von Erich and the Freebirds were all off the chart drawn.
Yes, sir. That was right after, and this is right after. I want to say 89, 88 is when they still had World Class was still going, and then Jerry Jarrett and Lawler bought it out, and it switched over from World Class to USWA.
And how were they drawing at that time still? Because at times, they went, off and on during that time.
And I've told the story before. It went from being the class act of World Class Wrestling to being the B act of USWA. They dropped the standards. It just wasn't. They didn't have the security. They didn't have a lot of the little things that World Class had to up it. Plus, they brought in that Memphis style wrestling, which Texas didn't buy one bit.
Wow, very great. That's a great point.
It was more gimmicks, more this and that, more comedy, I should say.
Yeah. When I was coming up, it's funny how wrestling's perceived. I was of course wrestling in school and everything. How wrestling, you had your Texas wrestling, because I grew up in Oklahoma. It wasn't much about Oklahoma or Kansas or even Minnesota at the time, but you had Texas wrestling, and you had New York wrestling, and you had Southern wrestling. But
right.
Texas wrestling was looked at as, man, that was a fight when you went down there.
Yes, that's what I was told.
The perception of Texas wrestling always stands out to me as that was a wrestling when you were a kid. We always waited for those south winds to blow so we could pick up wrestling from the sportatorium.
Exactly. And Red told me, he said, if you can survive Texas wrestling, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Ron, I always thought that, they talk about hardcore, coming in the mid 90s with ECW, and they did take it to a complete different level. But hardcore was there in Texas. I mean, that was
absolutely.
It was blood and guts.
I mean, every Friday night was hardcore.
Every Friday, it was.
And it was even worse if you had to work with John and Bobby Duncombe Jr.
Oh man, I can only imagine that.
Bart tagged out one time, and Johnny Mantell asked him, he goes, "How are they?" Bart goes, "Neither one can work."
Probably had easier street fights than you had wrestle matches with those two.
Oh my goodness. Bart would try to get Bobby to settle down, and I don't know if I listened any better. I thought I did because I was me, but Bobby was like the ever little Energizer bunny. He never stopped. He just constantly went, and it would drive Bart crazy.
It's like the old saying when I was coming up in the business. Well, it was like a night off. The kicks were off, the punches were off, and everything else.
Just a little off that night.
Yeah.
And working with John and that at that time when he was coming in was fine, and he was learning and he was aggressive, and I'd get in the ring and he'd want to call some spots, and I'd give him a little bit and say, okay, that didn't hurt too bad. He called a shot where he said, "Come in, I'm gonna give you the big boot." So here I come for that big boot. What I didn't know, he was gonna cock his knee about an inch. And when I come in, he was gonna extend that knee.
That's that spring loaded kick, right? There's a kick and there's that spring-loaded kick.
So I finally had to wrestle Bobby in Japan. We tagged for all that time together, lived together, everything, but I never worked with Bobby. Then I worked with Bobby and I go, now this is what everybody's talking about.
That tag didn't hurt, did it, John?
I'm sure he felt the same way. So when did you get hooked up with Steve Austin? Were you with Steve first or with Tatum first?
I was with Steve first, and that was right after we did the Kerry. With Kerry left to go to WWF or WWE at the time, and they said both have blonde hair. You guys have a good look. We'll put you in a tag, and worked at the Sportatorium, did the Memphis route. Gary Hart was running in Fort Worth or Arlington, doing his own little Texas championship wrestling or something, and he would use us too. Plus, I worked for Tom Jones out of Oklahoma for a while too during that time. So between all that was in the area and where we had to travel, we were working almost every night. When you get paid a lot, but we were good, we were getting experience.
Did you make it over to work for the Blanchards, Danny?
I'm sorry, sir?
Did you work with the Blanchards, Danny, over in San Antonio?
No, sir. No, sir.
I think by then, Jerry, I think Joe was done by then, I think.
Joe was finished. Tom Jones was running, and somebody out of Texas, but it wasn't out of Texas. I say out of Houston. And Gary Hart used to take us down there to work for that promoter, and I can't think of his name. It wasn't the promoter that was running, back in the day.
Bosch. It wasn't Bosch's group.
No, it wasn't Bosch. But I guess whoever it was always treated us well. Valentine comes to mind, but it may not. That might not be the name.
Yeah, you mentioned what kind of relationship did you have with Gary, one of my all-time best friends, Gary Hart? I mean, I love that guy to death, and what a guy to be with.
I love traveling with Gary, and he would always say, "Rod, just I know you're going to go out and have fun tonight. Just remember to bring Gary a little smoke tonight when you come in." I did every night. I never smoked back then, and
he would get up in the middle of the night and smoke a doobie, wouldn't he?
I came in at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I knocked once. About 5 seconds, he was right there.
Well, you know.
Come in.
Hey, he
Sit
would
there and tell you a program that he had dreamed about. I met a guy was so sharp, and he dreamt wrestling 24/7 too.
Yeah, absolutely. He was always going, man.
I roomed with him one time down in I remember South Texas. I think you were on the loops. I can't remember who we were working for. Like a lot of the border towns down there on the Texas side. And I roomed with Gary.
I think McAllen, wasn't it?
I think that's right. I think it was. Yeah, because Kerry was down there. And I ended up rooming with Gary. It was wonderful. Gary was, but he's just the nicest guy. Same thing. I'd come in, staggering at 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd wake up. He'd smiz just a little. Did you have a good night, my boy? And just nice as he could be. Nothing bothered him. He was the best.
I'd come in and I'd give him a smoke. I had a couple of beers in my pocket. Funny how that worked out. But I'd go in, and while he was rolling his little smoke, I'd drink a beer. We'd talk about tomorrow, the matches, and this and that, and said, "Well, my boy, have a good night. If you need something, knock on my door."
Wow, you were surrounded by greatness down there. Akbar.
I truly was, man.
What kind of friendship did you have with Skandor, Akbar?
Very close. Ak used to give me bookings, he picked me up, had that rental car deal. So Ak always drove one way. I usually drove back. But on that way, on the way to the shots or how many days we're out, he had his restaurants. You'd go here. He goes, "Man, we need to take this exit. There's a good all-you-can-eat buffet right here."
He picked all that up from Danny Hodge, because he used to be Danny Hodge's driver before I came along. And Hodge was like that. Akbar picked up all of Danny's habits, and they were all good habits because they were real clean guys. But Danny had his places where he'd go get his milkshakes. I got to have my milk. Danny's got to have his milkshake. So there's a place down there, and he had to have a little waitress that would give him a piece of cherry pie or a piece of apple pie. Akbar was the same way, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. He had him, and of course, every waitress is sweetheart, dear.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been coming in, the same week after week for so long. They knew Ak. They'd be, oh, Ak, hugging all over him, slip him a piece of pie.
Rod, I know you heard him do this because he loved talking like under his breath, double talk and carny talk all the time. Yeah. So anytime you'd see like a large person or an ugly person, because nobody knew my last name was Layfield, he would go, "Mrs. Layfield, you look great today. You must be going to the gym." And he'd do that like 10 times a day. Or Mr. Layfield, looking good today. And the guy would go, "Well, thank you, sir." And it was nonstop.
He was always going, always working.
Always going.
Always. And at Sportatorium, he'd find, the selection of women at Sportatorium, especially on a hot August day, Ak would come down. "Miss Price, how you doing tonight?" Smoking that cigar. She'd go, "How'd you like to sniff?" He'd pull me to the side by the ring. He goes, "How'd you like to sniff those panties?"
Ak was constantly on. It was so fun to be around him because he was always in a good mood, always laughing, and he loved the double talk, which hardly anybody does today. They love that double talk of. It was so fun.
John, do you remember? I feel like we're picking on Black Bart, but do you remember Ak telling the story about?
We can't pick on Black Bart enough, though.
The story about Barbara Mandrell, John.
Oh yes. Tell the story. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh yeah.
Please tell it, man.
So I think I'm gonna get this right because I've heard this a few times. Were they at a concert or they watching it on TV?
Watching it on TV.
So Bart is sitting there and he's had a few beers and he dipped his thing. Goes, "That's just an angel, Ak." That's just an angel. She's so beautiful. That's if an angel came down from heaven, she'd be Barbara Mandrell. She is just an angel. That's the most beautiful woman, the sweetest voice. That's what an angelic voice sounds like. And Akbar goes, "Are you kidding me? She blew Bobby Jaggers. What are you talking?" And Bart got so mad he wanted to fight Ack.
That whore.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd roll out.
All you got to do, all you had to do later in life was mention Barbara Mandrell around Ack and Black Bart. And Bart literally would get so mad that he would almost want to fight Ack. Sweet Ack, he's like 150 years old at the time. Bart gets so mad. Don't you bring up nothing about Barbara Mandrell. And then Ack would just start. Oh, you hear about her and Bobby Jaggers. Her and Jaggers were not.
The first time I heard that, I still cry. When I laugh and I cry about it because it's so funny. But the first time I heard that, I was rolling on the ground, crying, laughing, just side aching. I was like, oh, it's just so classic for that day, that time period with those guys.
Yeah. And Bart knows it's coming. Bart knows Ack's working him up, and Bart would still get mad about it, just as mad as he did the first time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that was so good.
So when Jared and Lawler bought out Dallas there, did you go up to Memphis and work for them any? And how was it?
Sir. I did two different trips with actually three. John and I were on the third one, but two different trips through the Memphis territories, 3-6 months was about as long as I could hang in that.
Yeah.
That was tough. That was a lot of miles.
Yeah. Like you were saying earlier, before I cut you off, I apologize, but the style of working up there was so much different than it was in Texas. Like, they gone into the entertainment by that time, where more entertainment. How did you find that style with working with the way you worked?
I was when I first started, I was more technical type of wrestler, and always wanted to, I was trained and taught, and still believe that you're telling a story, you're painting a picture, and my style and what they were doing it was night and day. Started that I always took wrestling serious. I wanted to make it as believable as possible. I didn't want anybody to doubt that if I was selling for you or you were selling for me, that you were either beating the crap out of me or I was beating the crap out of you, and make it believable. Gary Hart always told me, the people want to believe, make them believe. But working in Memphis with just all the hocus pocus they did, man, I didn't get, it rubbed me, and I probably rubbed them, because I'd rather beat somebody up with a chair sometimes.
Yeah.
Than to I'll bend over, you jack me with the ropes and the nut type thing. And I was like, wasn't my style.
Watching you, like John said, the great thing about this is we had to do research on the guys, and watching your style, it seems like Bill Watts, you would have been a natural fit with Bill. Did you ever hook up with Bill and pass through there, or what?
It was before my time. I came in, I played football. I guess I tried to play football just a little longer than I should have. And I kind of, you got one thing to regret, I wish I would have left football earlier and got into wrestling sooner.
Yeah.
But I did miss. I hooked up with Tatum after Memphis. In fact, USWA pulled out, and Kevin started it again. He tried to run the Sportatorium again, which was a complete failure. It just wasn't of it.
What do you think that was? He just didn't have the funds to back him, or the talent?
Funding was a big part of it. I think maybe, and this is just me talking, that maybe he thought just by him being there was enough of a draw. and times were changing because the entertainment market was getting larger. It used to be wrestling was like the thing to do, but we're getting into middle 90s, and you have more things, or more entertainment, especially in a better building than the Sportatorium. And I just don't think the funding and the way he did it were going to mix, and it didn't. The TV, they didn't have good TV either. But nobody killed it like Crockett when he tried to come back in and do it in '95. I've seen some bad promotion.
Well, why do you think that promotion failed so quickly too? And it wasn't a long drawn out thing. It was quick. They just failed.
It had a sudden death, Mr. Brisco. Yeah. It was. You went from all the music, from the intros to the guys, to turn back that clock to the 50s with no music, dead, cold entrance. The announcers, the wrestlers, you come out. Mm-hmm. And people were already conditioned, for the music, a little more entertainment style for the wrestling. And now you're turning the clock back.
One of the big things with Kerry was you come out to Iron Man. I mean, people went crazy, and all of a sudden you take that away from them, like Mr. Crockett did. I understand what he was trying to do, and I was there for a lot of that with Mr. Crockett. And, another thing he did was, you remember, we had huge crowds, but they were giving away the tickets.
Right. And that was a lot of GWF. That was
but we were, they were making money off of parking. They were making money off concessions. They figured, hey, we're going to fill the arena,
right?
Which they were filling it, but their tickets were nearly all free. But they're making money off parking. They're making money off concessions. And then Crockett says, no more free tickets. And people weren't.
He cut the tickets off. He cut, he had parking and concessions, and I can't remember what TV he had, but it was a weak TV too.
Yeah.
And it didn't last. That thing was on. It was on his last leg from the minute the curtain jerked.
From actually before they got in there.
Hey, we worked at Heart of Texas Arena one time down there in Waco. I'm sure you're on the card when they had like 47 people there because the guys that arena holds 14,000. Jerry, 14,000.
Wow.
They had 47 people there because the promoter got mad at Crockett for some reason and wouldn't even put the wrestling on the billboard. So I'm working with Greg Valentine. I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a night off. Uh-huh. Johnny Valentine shows up, and because his dad was there, Greg beat me to death for half an hour. Listen, these 47 people obviously don't matter to you. The one guy there does, but please quit beating me up.
Al Perez and I did a 2 out of 3 fall for sick paid customers.
Wow.
I still to this day think it was a rib because we had to go 25 minutes.
Oh, the crowds were so bad because Crockett had just, things have been run a certain way in Texas. People were used to it. The crowds were terrible. And I'm working with Greg Valentine, and Johnny, for some reason, Valentine, his dad, is showing up to all these arenas. Well, Greg, in front of his dad, is a different person. I mean, he turned into freaking Kimbo Slice. What is wrong with you?
Did Johnny Valentine, did he ever catch you in the back of the Sportatorium when he was sitting around with the boys?
No, he never grabbed you?
I was in hour-long matches with Johnny Valentine.
Oh, God bless you.
I was in Carolinas. I had the Mid-Atlantic belt, or whatever belt it was called, the Eastern Mid-Atlantic, whatever. I can't even remember the name of it. But anyway, one night it was Valentine. The next night it was Don Jardine, the spoiler. And every night, George Scott, his thought of a great finish was an hour Broadway. So I went something like 17 Broadways in a row with Johnny Valentine and Don Jardine. After about number 16 or 17, I went up to George Scott. I said, George, do I have heat with you? He said, no. Why? I said, you're friggin' killing me. Every night I'm on an hour Broadway with Johnny Valentine and Don Jardine. He looked at me, he said, have you learned anything? I said, that's not the point. I'm dead. I'm getting ready to die. man, yeah, that uplift that he used to give it in the corner there. Woo, it knocked your teeth out. I don't know if you ever experienced that one.
Mr. Briscoe, he would catch me in the back.
Uh,
He was crippled up then. And he would go up and watch my matches, come down, and for the next 20, 30 minutes, he would chop me. He would show me how to throw a punch. He'd rough me up. I'd look out of the corner of my eye, and Greg was, he was kind of smirking, thinking, thank God it's not me.
Yeah.
But he did teach me,
Yeah,
taught me
he was
things
a hell of
that
a
I
teacher.
knew.
Johnny was a great teacher.
And I appreciate it. It was a running rib with Greg and I. He's like, I go, Greg, is your dad gonna be good tonight? He's like, yeah, you better watch out.
Hey, Medusa told us a story about when they first dated. They went out with Johnny and for a night out on a dinner in a nice restaurant and stuff. And she feels something, splashing on her feet. She thought, what in the world? And Greg's laughing. Johnny was taking a leak under the table. Yeah, and Johnny had the sense of humor, and he was such a tough guy. I'm scared of Johnny.
Mr. Briscoe, did you ever pee in your beer or pee in your boot?
No, I tried to stay away from that. But my Johnny Valentine story, after he was in an airplane crash, he was booker down here in Florida for a while. So we were running St. Pete Bayfront Center over in St. Petersburg, of course. So there was a little nook there that everybody could go and see. It had like 3 sets of double doors, so that the guy in talent would sit right there and watch the matches. So Johnny, being booker, he wanted to see the matches. So we'd set him a chair out there so he could see the ring perfectly. So he's sitting there waiting. We're all sitting on the step and behind him there. We're watching this whole situation play out. So this cop comes in, this local cop comes in. He stands right in the middle of the doorway. Well, Johnny's got those braces on. You see Johnny kick his leg, take his brace, his crane, and kick his brace out, pop it into place, do the other, pop it into place, get on this crutch, walk up. He tapped the cop on the shoulder, and you could hear him, hey, sir, I'm sitting in that chair. I got to watch the match. Would you mind moving over? Cop would move over. Johnny go back, pop his braces back out, sit down in his chair, and the cop would start enjoying the matches and ease his way back over where Johnny was sitting. Well, Johnny, as you know, he chewed that red man all the time. Right. So he got a big chaw in his mouth. So pretty soon that cop's there. You see Johnny push himself up, push the braces out, go up, and he goes, just spits a big old load of that juice right in the back of the cop's neck. Man, that cop turns around. Here's a cripple man just spit in the back of your neck. He ain't gonna hit no cripple man. Plus he's Johnny Valentine. And he starts apologizing to Johnny the whole time. He's wiping the damn shirt. Johnny just like does that, turns around, pops it, crunches back down, sits in a chair, watches the rest of the match.
Oh, yeah. Got the apology, too.
The only guys I was like really ever nervous around were Johnny Valentine and Mr. Fuji. Because those were the 2 guys I thought, brother, they ain't got a filter. If they want to get me, they're going to get me. And they're legends. So I just sit there and watch them the whole time. Just watch them.
Wise decision.
Yeah. That Tatum was I don't know about underrated. He was over, but what a great hand John Tatum was. Hollywood.
Unbelievable. John taught me how to read a crowd. John, his psychology, and people nowadays, they don't know how to do it. You go out, you get a feel for the crowd. It's like people want to come in and say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's like John would say, I don't know what they're buying. Let's go, we'll see when we get out there. We'll see when they get out. And he just, working with him just showed me so much about, let's see what the crowd, reading the crowd, feeling for a crowd, and adding the psychology into a match. It was amazing. John, besides being a ball, just a lot of fun. John was, he knew the business,
You know, that's how Freebird got into the business was John Tatum.
I remember.
Apparently Michael, and I'm not telling, everybody tells Michael Hayes stories. I only tell them if Michael's okay with them. Michael's told this. Apparently Michael was like the weed hookup for guys at the Pensacola Fairgrounds when Michael was like 15 years old. So I don't think would surprise anybody. So, you know, he and John were friends. His dad owned the fairgrounds in Pensacola where the wrestling was, and that's how Freebird ended up getting into the business.
Did you ever run across Freebird, Eddie?
Yes. Michael was gone, but Gordy and Buddy were still around, and I was able to work with Terry and Buddy a lot. Good matches. Michael came in. We did some benefit shows around Texas. At that time, they had those storms going, tornadoes ripping through Killeen, Texas. I mean, it just devastated that area. And they put on a big card and brought the Freebirds in to work that. Actually, worked the Von Erichs before Kerry was gone. But yes, sir, I did. I was able to spend a little time with them too, and
just a learning experience there in many ways.
Yes. Experience in the ring and out of the ring. How's that?
Exactly.
Hey, I've told Bam Bam's daughter Miranda many times that everything I've got, I stole from Bam Bam. You know, I remember working with Bam Bam one time, and I'd stolen so many things from him. I'm sitting there thinking I'd forgotten where I stole it. I'm sitting there thinking he's stealing all my shit, and I'm sitting there thinking, why is he doing all my moves? And I literally,
if you had to work with him, what would you do?
Yeah. And then I realized like an idiot. I go, wait a minute, I stole that from him. That Bam Bam. I mean, that's God's gift to wrestling. What a great worker he was. A big man that could work. Him and Doc, him and everybody were so good.
I did a tag match with it was Doc and Bam Bam.
Death, for those that don't know.
Yeah.
Dr. Death, Steve Williams and Bam Bam against Tatum and I. And you know, I loved their physicality, you know, in the match, you know, roughing it up and, you know, working, you know, I always thought I worked snug, not stiff, but snug.
If you thought you worked snug, you were snug.
But John would take it, but he didn't, you know, he'd rather be touchy-feely, you know, but we had a good match, but John didn't like it that night. But working Terry and Dr. Death, man, what a privilege that is too. Just great guys, great people in and out of the ring. And Bam Bam, just amazing how big he was to move like he could. It was just, he could have done anything he wanted in professional sports, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And when he was with anybody, he was good. But with the Freebirds were so good. When you had, of course, Jimmy Garvin was great too. But the original group with Buddy, you had everything. You had the
talk. They had something for everybody, that threesome there.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I always thought, you know, in the wrestling business, there's, you know, certain guys that come along that change the business. I always thought they changed it because they were the first heel attraction. You know, before that, you just had, you know, fire bad, water good. You had, you know, your baby faces and your heels. But those guys were some of the first cool, you know, Magnum TA was the same time up in the Carolinas, but your first cool bad guys, you know, were the Freebirds.
Yeah.
Because unless they wrestled the Von Erichs, they were cheered.
And they had to turn them.
Yeah.
They had to turn them. But it was a good time. You know, I look at it as kind of, you know, from Mr. Bristow's era, as far as territories and working the territories and all that. What a wonderful time for the guys, but you know, the workers that were involved in that, the stories they have. You know, I'm a huge story guy, but if I had to do it my way again, if I could have been born a little earlier to work more of the territories, that would have been my wish.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a time that I was so blessed to come up during that time frame, and I got to experience that because I was right, when I started the territories, the business was so different back then. And I know the young guys hate to hear that, but I came along in an era where there were a lot of really old timers in the business. When I started, my brother started, we were the young pups in the business. We really were, and we got to experience those car rides with the Sputnik Monroes, the Great Bolos, and guys like that. Experiences that you'll never forget, and they'll never be duplicated. And listen to Luther Lindsay tell about the racial slurs that he had to go through, and Thunderbolt Patterson going up and down the road with him and seeing it firsthand, how it was for a minority guy to be in the business. It was a wonderful time to experience. I know it wasn't that wonderful for them every day, but they were so successful at it that people respected them down the line there. But it was a beautiful time to be in the business, and that's the thing I'll always treasure.
If I could go back in time, I'd love to experience that. Act used to tell me about how different it was in coming up, and
Rod, the one guy that was a rock star that always came in, and I think you'll feel the same way, was Bronco Lubitsch.
Yeah,
Bronco.
Oh, yeah.
When he walked in, you just knew that's somebody special. It's just like everything about him was old school. Everything about him was classy. I mean, it was so cool to be around Bronco.
John, you're right. When those old timers walked in, they walked in with set for fashion and their step and the way they carried themselves, And growing up, you always picked a couple of guys. Man, I want to be just like that. I'd see Luther or I'd see Daddy Hodge walk in a building. They'd be dressed out. They'd be carrying that suitcase. They'd open their suitcase. You watch every move that they make. You'd watch how they open their suitcase. You'd watch where they set their cushion. You'd watch how they took out their equipment. I mean, everything about them you wanted to learn and you wanted to suck in your brain there.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I could only imagine. I remember being Mr. Brisco. I remember being very young in the business and having Bronco as my referee. And I'm all hot. I have these ideas about how I'm going to get over and, how I'm going to be the big, and I'll never forget it. I'm out there trying to get heat, everything wrong to get heat. Bronco says, knock it off.
That's great.
I said, yes, sir.
One thing about riding with Akbar and Killer was they knew, I don't know about their role, but they knew how the wrestling business always passed down information. So they're always trying to educate. You remember Ak telling me about Lou Thez and how Lou Thez would come through the box office. He wouldn't go through the back, so the fans would see him in his suit. And then he walked to the dressing room, and when he walked out, you knew that was the main event. Those old guys, the ones that really got over, they were just a different breed. And it was cool to see Bronco because you just knew he came from a different era. And it was a cool era.
It was such a privilege. You came in, and I always kept my mouth shut. I'd listen to his stories,
Well, we did too, man. Back then, we did too.
Just shut up and listen, Rod. That's what I was told. But I enjoyed the stories. Act used to tell me, about his day and working territories, working here, working there. Him and Danny Hodge together. Said
they were a pair that was so fantastic to watch together. Ack was the perfect side man for Danny too. I mean,
Ack would tell me about Danny going in the hardware stores and snapping the pliers.
Yeah, give me your best pair of pliers. Give me your best pair of pliers. I don't think there was a hardware store between Tulsa and Little Rock, Arkansas that Danny did go in and tell.
Ack told me they usually had Sunday off.
Yeah.
And he said Danny would get the Sunday paper. And, a lot of people don't remember how thick a Sunday paper was.
Right.
But he would crumble it up sheet by sheet.
Yeah.
And work on that grip. I remember him telling me that. And
that was Danny, yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, every town we go into, he'll tell one of the referees or one of the guys setting up the ring, go get me the phone book. Why do you need a phone book? Just go get me the phone book. They bring the phone book. Then they come in. Oh, it's big town. Little Rock. That thicker phone book. Yeah. Oh yeah, this big phone book. He did take it. Start. Wow, they rip right in half.
Absolutely, man.
Hey, Rod, you remember Otto Vance could do that? The phone books.
I didn't get to see him do it. I knew he could.
Yeah, I saw him do it one time.
I always said, man, I want to see it. I want to see it, but I never got.
I think the year before you got there, I was with him on some appearance down in Austria. It was some special deal. I can't remember what it was. And they brought him a bunch of phone books. And literally, it was like ripping a piece of paper in half. I mean, it was really impressive. Because at one point, somebody said he had a record for ripping phone books in half. But it was
a record, a Guinness Book of Record.
Yeah, he'd break the binding.
Yeah.
And then
there were the gimmicks of that, and I never learned the gimmicks to it, especially the thick ones, But yeah, you're right, John. They would you get that binding and you bind it in a certain direction.
Yep, he'd break the binding, and then he'd rip that phone book in half, and he ripped about 3 or 4 in half, and he was 100% covered in sweat when he was done.
Hodge was different. Hodge wouldn't work the phone book. He would just take it 2 hands and just start like that and just rip it right out.
Wow.
That was a
what a sight it was to see the people's faces when they
I could imagine.
When steel belt tires come out, they weighed like 300 pounds a damn tire.
Yeah.
Hodge went and he was talking to the guy at the service station. We're getting gas. Those new steel belt, yes, sir, they're indestructible. Nothing could do. Hodge takes it and he starts playing it like a damn accordion. We're all on our faces.
Oh man.
Hey, Rod, you know a story I forgot? And we had Missy Hyatt on, who was fantastic. I know she was the manager for you and Tatum.
Yes.
She asked me a story about when Metal Maniac went out. Remember that? I forgot all about it. When he went out and took a picture with Kerry Von Erich, he stood in the Polaroid line and took a picture and paid for he left the dressing room. Remember that?
Yes. Do you remember? I think it was you and Bobby. Ack sent you guys out to bring him back.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. I forgot about it. Yes. Yeah.
We were watching the monitor, and and he goes out to get an autograph and Ack. Oh, what the hell's going on here? Get Duncan and Johnny Hawk over here. Go get that son of a gun out there.
That's right. We had to go get him. Yeah. I forgot all about that. I wonder if he still has the autograph.
Maybe. That was a tough one.
I mentioned Otto Vance. What a great territory that was in Europe. I mean, that was... if we could have made money there, I'd have worked there the rest of my life. That was so much fun to be over there. We may have made money actually, but the money was decent. It wasn't like we weren't broke over there. Money was decent, but
money was decent. You learn to cut angles. You
probably agree. You work the same place every night, so every one of your matches had to be different, and that's when you learn how to work there.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That working there with the talent they had, Tony St. Clair.
Oh, wow.
Working with Dave Taylor and I went blank.
Luke Poirier, who was Rambo, Gustl Smeasel, Franch. Yeah. I mean, there's so much great talent over there. It was unbelievable.
And we're able to work them every night. Different styles, different different ways to work, and it was special times. What a learning ground it was. For me, you you get to a point if you're in a territory. For me, if I was in a territory too long, I was getting stale. So it was time for me to move on to work against new talent. And man, that was like open up a new education for me working for Otto in Europe over there.
Yeah. I remember when we were standing in the parade the first time I was there, and Mick McMichael, the referee who wore the kilt all the time.
Uh-huh.
I look over there, he probably did it to you too. And I look over there and he's lifted one leg and put it behind his back. So he looks like he just has one leg. And I'm out there trying to be this heel. And I look over there and I just bust out laughing. Like, when you first see it, it's just funny. They had so many ribs and jokes,
every night, every day. The parade itself, it was like you had to keep your eye out. All right, what's going on?
All the time. Guys had too much time on their hands, and there was a rib every day on something.
Well, there's no, John, we stayed in those towns like 60, 70 days in a row.
Wow.
And there's no travel. You walk out your caravan to the building. That was your travel.
Right.
So there was a lot of downtime for us.
Yeah, if you had to be there at 5:30, you could leave your caravan at 5:29 and 45 seconds and get there on time.
Get there on time.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of travel.
None.
Well, John has told me a story about you that I want to hear from you, and it involves Chris Adams. And John,
yes,
you want to take it?
No, I don't remember if I was there or not. It was, obviously, I think it was
John. We talked earlier. I'm gonna put you in the story.
You remember events. You forget if you're in places or not, and some people say, you weren't there. I go, yeah, I was.
Run together.
I wasn't there. So anyway, as a match with you and Chris Adams, and something just went horribly wrong. I mean, a mistake that, from what I understand.
Well, what happened?
What happened?
I was at that point. They put Steve and I together, I guess, because we were both blonde at the time and both losing our hair. So I was a little more self-conscious. So I started thinking of ways, man, what can I do? Rub stuff in my hair, this and that. I went to the hair club guy. And he's like, well, we can do this or we can do that. And I'm thinking, man, they're going to yank on my hair. They're going to pull on it. You got to give me a better option. So he goes, all right. So he goes, man, I got this thing. We're gonna weave it in. And when we do that, we're gonna use a special super glue to hold it in. And they did it, and they're pulling on it. It's like, as long as you can't let somebody yank, but if they grab your hair, you're gonna be all right. So oh man, I got a new lease on life, man. I got my hair back. I'm just thinking, whoo, here we go. And it went. And it was the worst thing, Mr. Brisco, because blonde hair, probably when John got in, there was probably an inch of my blonde hair every time in that ring, man. It was just everywhere. Constantly having to go in and get the center plates. And I'm like, ah. But leading up to that, Chris Adams, I came in that night and he's like, he wanted to do a judo match. And I was like, we haven't built up for it. There was no angle. We were still doing we'd still been going back and forth with our little angle, but there was no build up for a judo match. Just one night he wants to come in and say, all right, put on this, we're doing a judo match. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. There's no buildup. Why? No rhyme, no reason. And after it finally convinced me, I said, all right. So we're working out, and he was going through a bad time with one of his wives. I can't remember which one it was, but they were really having problems with it. And he told me before while he was getting dressed, he'd leave and go. I could hear him arguing in the hallway. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, this match is just going to suck 6 weeks of Sunday, you know? And every time he comes in, he's angrier. I was like, look, man, I don't want to do this match to begin with. And you're not in the right mood. You know, your head's not in this thing. And, you know, let's just do something else. He insisted. Got in the match. He had really his anger had really stirred up. I don't know if it's at her and me or me because I didn't want to do the judo match. But anyway, you get in there, man, out of nowhere, he stiffs me just right off. And I'm like, oh, you want a judo match, do you? So I flippered him like he when I hit him, he flew back and split his lip. And here we go. The spuds just start flying, man. And he threw me out, and I was getting ticked, man. I was about to lose my cool. And I was on the outside of the ring, and he reached down and snatched that off me. And when it did, it ripped where the seam of the glue was on both sides of my head, where the arteries are.
Yeah.
Ripped it. And man, I could feel when you get that deep cut and it doesn't bleed right away.
Oh, yeah.
But you know it's going to be bad. Yeah. That's what I got. I got in, and I think I threw the judo thing on my head because I was like thinking compression. And I went out the backside, and man, I started bleeding like a pig. I went to I think it was Park Memorial Hospital in Dallas, and they put 209 stitches in my head.
Wow. Oh my goodness!
They had to call in a neurosurgeon to stitch up my head because the arteries were broken.
Wow. Oh, you're lucky you didn't die.
Yeah. And Chris called me that night. And I was like, I'm not in the mood to talk. I didn't want to do the match. Now you do something stupid like this. He's like, all right. He hangs up. Bart will tell you, Chris went back, grabbed his gear, and left the building. Wow. He never gave me a chance because if I had been bleeding like a pig, he was going to be bleeding like a pig when I left, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
But later on, we did a match, and he was calling me a week up to the match. In fact, I still got the little picture of it. Adams versus Price hair match. But leading up to that, he called me and was, oh, you know, please, you know, forgive me, this and that. I was like, of course, Chris. You know, bygones are bygones in wrestling. And we worked, and he was just waiting for me to receipt him. You know, it's one of those things where you're, please just receipt me and let's get it over with so we can move on, you know? And I let it go. You know, I didn't bring it out. We were doing TV that night, so I didn't want to do anything unprofessional. The next week we did a show in Ardmore, Oklahoma. And the buildup was he was doing a tough man contest, and he was a referee. Angle was I was going up there because the TV was coming up there. I was going up there to harass him at this tough man contest in the main event to build up for the show the next night. I got up there, and it's a boxing ring. Boxing rings are hard, and they're not connected at the corners. I shot him in, and I backdropped him over the top rope onto the ground in a rodeo ring, and it ended up breaking 3 of his ribs.
Whoa.
And I felt bad, kind of. Mr. Brisco, I'll be honest, I was still very angry, but I felt bad, kind of. But, you know, for what he had put me through and put my family through at the time. I thought my wife walked right past me at when I was in the emergency room. She didn't even recognize me. I was bloodied from head to toe, still in my ring gear, and she couldn't even recognize me. So when I broke his ribs, I was really thinking, kind of what goes around comes around, Chris. And I had another accident with him about a week after that. I ended up breaking his arm too. So
holy shit.
So we had a better understanding when we got in the ring about 3 weeks later with each other. And
so it took about 3 weeks to get over it, and
about 3 weeks to get it out of my system. Yeah.
I don't blame you one bit.
Yeah. What, I just remember hearing about it, and so whether I was there that night or not, I don't know if I wasn't there for that because I didn't.
You drove me to the hospital, John. You don't
That's
remember?
right. I drove you to the hospital.
You said you were going to work him into the story.
I remember the time.
Way to go. You're a hell of a worker, right?
I remember the time I was in Rod's corner and drove him to the hospital. And I was the one that actually ended up stitching him up because the doctor was busy. So it's.
I liked it.
You took the hairpiece and mysteriously put it on the bed tray there so they could find it. The Secret Service could find it later, right?
Well, Rod, it all healed up, right? I mean, it all healed up. It looks like fine.
Yeah. The Lord took care of me again, John, healed me up. And
so I'm going to ask a stupid question. You still got the hairpiece?
No, but if Caveman, John, if you remember Caveman, one of the
very well. Yeah.
He has it.
Really? Oh, it's out there. Oh my goodness! What a piece of memorabilia that is.
I'm telling you.
What a demented person to keep that.
I know, but he was.
There's the hair. I'm going to keep it. I mean, that's not a normal person that thinks about that.
No. I think he had a little Indian in him from Oklahoma.
Oh, wait a minute. Oklahoma. I can't top that story, but I've worked with Tony Marino. He wore a hair piece. He didn't have the weave. And that guy wasn't selling nothing I was doing. I was coming back the next week for I guess a race or one of those guys, a Vonker race or something like that. And Marino wasn't selling nothing I was doing. And I noticed his hairpiece started slipping and slipping and slipping. So I'm going to get him to sell. So I grabbed that hairpiece and I ran back. I hit him as hard as I can in the cheek. He goes down and I got the damn hairpiece in my hand. Then I panic, I'm panicking. And everybody's just busting out laughing. I go over and try to put that damn hairpiece back on his head. He takes and throws it out in the damn office. He's so damn mad at me. I thought he was going to kill me when we got back to the dressing room. But he thanked me. He said, I've been wanting to get rid of that damn thing forever.
Well, I think after that, when John and I went to, next year after John was there a year, I went there in 95. And it was like, man, I got to get rid of this thing. This thing's killed me. So it was a perfect timing to unfold to come out,
So you and Steve Officer ended up the same way.
Yes, sir. In fact, Steve had just left WCW, and Otto wanted to use him in Bremen for the anniversary show, the end of the year show. And I called Steve, and it was timing when Steve was just talking with Vince about coming up to be the ringmaster. And that's the first time he said, I go, what are they going to call you? And he said, ringmaster. I said, ringmaster? He goes, yeah, we're going to work on that. But yeah, we both ended up bald though, sir.
Yeah, when I went in there, Steve I don't know how he came up with the idea of Stone Cold, but they started about thinking different names about different things, a real like cold-blooded person. Ice Dagger was one of the names they mentioned to him.
John, I was actually on the telephone with him, sitting in this same probably a different chair, but in the same office right here when he came up with Stone Cold.
Really?
Yeah, well, I called him because Vince called me and he said he hates your ringmaster. Call him. Don't lose him. You guys come up with something he's happy with. So I called him, and his wife at the time just brought a case of beer in. He finished the case of beer, and then they come up with that Stone Cold, off that movie.
Wow.
Best ideas. How many wrestling ideas have come up over beer?
Oh man, I wish we had an encyclopedia of beer stories.
Beer and Brisco. Those are the two.
Beer and Brisco and Bradshaw.
B&B, man.
That's right. It's unbelievable when Steve came in. We all knew how good he was. He's always been that good. It just you had him stuck in that and just didn't work. It was a crazy time. Kane was a dentist, and Hunter was an aristocrat. I mean, you had a bunch of guys that were. You could tell were really good workers, but for whatever reason, what they were in wasn't working.
Right.
Sometimes
I remember on Steve, Vince told me, "I don't want to lose it. We can't lose this guy. He's going to make us some money." We didn't know how much money. We didn't have a clue there was going to be that much money, but Vince knew right away. I don't want to lose this guy, so you stay on the phone with him until he comes up, and you guys come up with something that he can live with, and we did. Probably an hour and a half, 2 hour conversation.
Man, that's awesome. That's a good story in itself, man.
Yeah, so and then Freebird was the one that kind of spurred the whole Austin 316 thing. Not that he came up with it, but he's the one that buzzed Steve when he came back, because Steve got his lip busted open, had to go to the hospital, get sewed up, come back, and then Michael Hayes, the one that buzzed him, and said, "Hey, Jake cut a religious promo on you. Just let him know that Jake had done this, so he could had a way to answer it." Then on the fly, he comes up with that Austin 316, and man, we sure are thankful he did.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it went crazy after that. I mean, any building you stuck his name on, he sold it out anywhere in the world.
Anywhere.
What a talent
run he went on was, I don't know how. You might have somebody that might equal it. Nobody's ever going to top it.
Now, when you teamed up with him, I mean, I know you saw the talent because it was easy to see the guy was that talented. But what did you see in Steve when you were tagging him?
Well, I saw his dedication. I saw his athletic ability, and just for me, what amazed me about Steve was he could learn so quick, and he would see something. We'd watch film. We'd watch film from Portland territories. If we weren't working after the gym, after we ate, we were having a couple of beers.
There were no YouTube at that time. Where were you watching your film at the?
We're at my house with James Beard.
The old cassette tapes, right? Or not cassette.
OVHS out of Portland. Out of Portland, Oregon. With it wasn't a Piper era. It was like the 90s, right before that territory died. Had Adams, and still had Raven was still up there. Scott was still up there. But we were able to see what was going on, and there was still Matt Bourne was still up there, as a matter of fact.
Matt was a terrific worker too.
Oh man, and there's another talent that helped me out. I know he helped Steve out, but Steve was just so amazing, man. I was so happy. Nobody, after eating a bag of potatoes, I quit that territory, that Memphis territory. That he came back, man, and he was like,
when you're making no money, and you're eating a potato a day to survive it, that's dedication to stay there and learn your trade.
Unbridled. And he was a better man than me, because I was like, I ain't doing that. And Steve stuck with it and had a bag of potatoes, man. I go, what are you doing? I go, come on, let me buy you a burger.
That's not the first time that anybody's accused you of having a bag of potatoes, Rod.
There's a few spuds in there, huh?
A few. Well, John learned from the best when he learned from you how to throw those potatoes.
I did. I had great mentors. Rod was one of them. I had so many matches with Rod. I learned so much. I would learn from Rod, from Killer, from James Beard, from Ack. I mean, I had and Black Bart. I learned a ton from Bart. I mean,
great mentor. That's something we're all blessed with, no matter what era we come up with. They're great workers in every era, and they're great that want to share their knowledge in every era.
And Rod was one of those.
It's just being a young guy that wants to learn and show those guys your dedication. Show those guys that you want to learn, and they'll teach you. Even today, there's guys out there that's willing to show what knowledge they have. And I appreciate those guys from today.
You bet. I'm thankful for them coming up.
Rod was one of those guys that I'm sorry, Rod, me cut you off. I
was just saying, anybody was sharing with me. Anybody that had advice for me, I was willing to have an ear, man.
And Rod was one of those guys when I came along, the perfect veteran to teach you, because he'd say, "I'll see you out there." Basically, "I'll see you out there, kid." The old phrase, but that's what it was. We worked so many nights, and we weren't making hardly any money. But we were working every night, and you'd work with Rod, wherever it was. You go, I'll see you out there. And so you had to go out there and think. You had to go out there and try to at least figure out what he's calling,
right,
and why it's reacting to the crowd,
and why he's calling that,
why he's calling it, and what your part needs to be as far as working. Because to cover up the transitions, the gaps, and stuff. That's how you learn. If it's just all. At least in my opinion, if it's planned out from A to Z, you're going through a karate kata. It's just my foot here, your foot there, and you just go through it. But when you're actually out there working, it makes a big difference. And that's why guys like Rod were so important to anywhere, to guys like me, just like guys that were important to Rod that helped him along the way before him.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Rod saw a lot of himself in you. Here you're a young football player. Both of you played football, and both of you getting into a strange business. And I'm sure Rod wanted to help you out and share that knowledge with you because of the mutual respect that you guys probably had for each other.
Absolutely. Being, John being, 8 foot tall anyway, 8 foot tall alien from Texas, man. Coming, playing football.
We'll let that go by though.
Oh my goodness! Well, my first night after that match with you, I went out with Manny Fernandez and Butch Reed. We're out at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a wild ride. At one point, Manny, they cut him off. He threw 2 pitchers just over his head in a crowded bar. And I was like, well, this is going to be very interesting. This is going to be very
So, Rod, what are you up to now? Where are you living, and what are you up to, man?
Mr. Brisco, I am living on the bayou.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar down here in Louisiana, if you've heard of Coquetry.
No, I've heard of Opelousas and all that. I worked Louisiana when I was a rookie.
Do you remember Houma?
Houma, Louisiana. I sure do. Crawfish capital of the world.
I am 30 minutes from Houma on the bayou.
You're out in the bayou.
No, if you look on the map, we're in the Gulf. So we're having a house built. The hurricane got us a couple of years ago. I'm enjoying my grandkids, getting some fishing in. This year, I'm going to hunt gator. I'm going to hunt some alligator, and I'm going to hunt some nutria.
Yeah.
So
hunt some. What was the second one?
Nutria.
Yeah, enlighten me on that.
You know what nutria? Nutria is like looks like a big rat. Got the big old buck teeth.
Yeah.
But they're invasive. They've been tearing up the land. They're vegetarians, but they breed like rabbits, and they're just horrible for the land. Oh. So on the back property, the state of Louisiana has put a $6 bounty on them.
Wow.
On their tail. So I'm gonna be doing some collecting.
There you go. Good for you, man.
There's nothing like a big old bucktooth rizat.
Yeah. Hey, worth $6 a tail, man. You get all you can.
That's great. Hey, Ron, thanks so much for. I appreciate.
Man, you guys, I just can't say enough. Thank you. I haven't laughed this hard. Enjoyed every minute of this, man. I thank you, fellas. I appreciate it.
Thank you.